worked as a scheduler for Senator Joni Ernst. An Iowa native, Josie started on Capitol Hill as an intern for Senator Chuck Grassley in the fall of 2007. She returned to her alma mater, Simpson College, to finish her junior and senior years and started full-time with Senator Grassley in May of 2009 as a staff assistant. In January 2011, she transitioned to the House side, becoming the scheduler for Congresswoman Renee Elmer. After 4 years with Congresswoman Elmer, she returned to the Senate side in the Iowa delegation in January 2015 to work for the wonderful Senator Joni Ernst. Married to her high school sweetheart, in her spare time, Josie says she enjoys spending time with friends, running, and live music. Josie told me that as a teenager, both she and her sister had a copy of the Clare Blues Policy Institute's Great American Conservative Calendar. I myself received a copy of the calendar each year, long before I ever started college or started working for the Institute. It is really neat to now be working with Josie to put Senator Joni Ernst in our 2016 Great American Conservative Women Calendar. The Institute has provided each of you a copy of the 2015 calendar in your folder. I hope that you'll enjoy it as much as Josie and I did. Now, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Josie Beecher. Hi, is this better? Can you hear me in the back?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Like Laurel said, I'm Josie Beecher. I am an Iowa native. I started interning on Capitol Hill in 2007, all the way back when President Bush was still president, which makes me feel very old. And I started at Senator Grassley's front desk a week after the first Obama administration Supreme Court vacancy. So I worked during 2 Supreme Court vacancies and health care. So everyone was very happy with America. No one complained. Calls were very pleasant. So it was a great way to start on Capitol Hill. So I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about being an intern and being an effective intern, and then I'll talk about finding your first job, and then I'll talk about finding a second job. Because we talk a lot about finding a first job, about getting your foot in the door, but then you're sitting there and you realize that you're not going to answer the phone forever, you're not going to open mail forever, you need to find a way, you can't have your foot in the door for 5 years, you want to have your whole self in the door. So, a little bit about, and thank you all so much for having me here, and thank you also all so much for what you do. I realize not all of your offices probably say thank you to you every day, but when you all leave, we realize how much you all do. So thank you very much for coming in, doing things that want to get done for you, and most of you probably for free. So on behalf of everyone, we really appreciate it. I guess I'd like to talk a little bit first about networking. Networking is a word that I don't love because I think a lot of people do it incorrectly. What is not networking is getting a business card, emailing that person the next day and saying, so how can you help me find a job? That's not networking. That's making people never want to hire you. Networking is getting a business card, emailing that person and saying, it was so nice to meet you at blank event. I'd love to hear more about what you do. Would you be willing to sit down and chat when you have a free moment? That's networking. Networking is not being the Capitol Hill staffer last year who emailed every single Republican chief of staff and said, I would like a different job, how can you help me? It is far better that an office does not know who you are than knows who you are because they will never hire you. So that did happen. I know the person who did that. He did not get a new job. So, and I think one of my favorite things about Washington is that people here have done a lot of interesting things or seen a lot of interesting things. So a lot of them like to talk about that. I've never before heard a conversation in Washington that someone says, oh, tell me about yourself, and the person says, oh no, I'd rather not, there's nothing to say. People in DC like to talk about themselves, and they like to talk about how they've gotten here and what they do. So ask them. It's really interesting. Working for Senator Grassley, I worked with the people that staffed Senator Grassley during the Clinton impeachment hearings. That's interesting. It's not particularly helpful in my job hunt, but it was interesting to hear about. And it's just, everyone has advice to give you. I think almost everyone here likes being asked for advice, so ask them. And the more people that you interact with, the more people you encounter, the more people you do informational interviews and sit-downs with, the better you're going to get at it, and the more likely they're going to be to pass along your resume. I formerly worked for Congresswoman Renee Elmer from North Carolina. Any North Carolinians? Yes, I love North Carolina. It's not my native state, but I really enjoyed my 4 years working in the delegation. It's a huge delegation, 13 members. Not as big as Texas or California, but a big delegation. And anytime someone would say, oh, can you sit down with me? I'm moving to Washington and want to hear about how to find a job, I'd always sit down with them. And it's so, those offices may not have an opening right now, they may not have an opening in 2 months, but while you're off babysitting or bartending or doing whatever you're going to do to make enough money to keep looking for a job, those people are going to have an opening and they're going to call you. I've helped a ton of interns get jobs. I've helped interns that weren't my own interns, but interns for friends of mine get jobs. Because no one in DC got here by themselves. No one moved here, gave their resume to a member of Congress, and was hired the next day. That doesn't help. Like, that doesn't happen. We all had some sort of help getting to where we're getting, and I think it's only right that you help other people that are trying to do that. And we're lucky to be in DC. These are very competitive jobs. They're very competitive jobs for low salaries and long hours. But you get to do something that most other people never get to do. So I think it's really important that you kind of pay it back. Someone helps you, you help someone else. Someone helps you find a job, you help someone from your alma mater find an employer. It's how it goes. And you'll get a lot further doing that. Which kind of leads to my next point. There's a lot of talk about being nice in the workplace, especially as women. And I don't so much think that you have to be nice. I just think that you need to be the kind of staffer you want to work with. Be the kind of intern you want to work with. Think about if you were working in an office. Would you want an intern that shows up late, shows up hungover, shows up not wearing appropriate clothes, doesn't answer the phone, tells you no, they're not going to want to do things? No, no one would like that intern. That intern will never get a job. So don't be that intern. And when I say be the kind of staffer you want to work with, be the kind of person who, no, if I worked for a male chief of staff for 4 years under a female member, and he never once asked me to get his coffee. But if I was running downstairs to pick up breakfast, I'd say, hey, is there anything I can grab for you? 95% of the time he'd say no. But I'm a female chief of staff now, and I ask her that too, because that's the kind of staffer I would want to work with. So, and then also, and I'm sure you ladies have all heard a lot about this, but dress for the job you want, not the job you have. Again, back to an office having a negative impression of you being worse than having no impression of you. I saw an intern walking down the hall the other day, and every 2 steps she'd pull her skirt down. If you have to do that, you shouldn't be wearing a skirt. And I know that I'm sure that you all have a lot of great, fun, great casual clothes. Don't put a blazer over it. It doesn't work. It's not professional. I have a whole rack of clothes that I am not going to wear on a Saturday or a Sunday because they're clothes that I wear to work. So dress as though you're taking this as seriously as you are. You all look wonderful today, so thank you. I appreciate that on behalf of all women in Washington. We joke about it being skin turn season, but it really is unfortunate. After an intern goes home in August, if the only thing you can remember about them is that they wore strapless dresses with cardigans, you're not going to call that person when you need a staff assistant in 9 months. You just aren't. Oh, and it kind of leads me to my next point, which is that you're all very, very smart, qualified, studious, academic, talented young women. And so is everyone else that lives in Washington. This is a city full of brilliant, brilliant people. And we're very lucky to be here. We're lucky to be surrounded by those people. Some of the best and brightest in America live in Washington and work on Capitol Hill. And we're so lucky to get to have those people be our coworkers, our supervisors, our interns. I definitely have interns that have probably better test scores and better resumes than I did when I was in college. So we're very lucky to have those people. But it means that it's incredibly competitive. So how are you going to set yourself apart? Oh, are you going to set yourself apart by being an intern that doesn't dress appropriately and that's why people remember you? Or are you going to set yourself apart because you're always the intern that's there 10 minutes early, you're the person that when someone says, oh, can you do this? You say, sure, yes, when do you need that done by? That's the kind of intern you want to be. Washington is also a city where, you're going to encounter a lot of people that their parents were able to help them get their foot in the door. You're going to encounter people whose parents are able to write checks bigger than I will probably ever be able to write them. But you're also going to encounter a lot of people that are first-generation college students and are here because they went out and knocked a ton of doors, and they are, babysitting at night and on weekends so they can be able to provide the life they want to have so they can work on Capitol Hill. Not every one of those people deserves their job more than the other one. What you want to do is get your foot in the door, get on the Hill, and then differentiate yourself. I have kids that were hired that got internships because of their parents' connections that have been great. I also have kids that have done that have been terrible. I have people that just finished being their freshman year of college that come out here and are amazing. I have people that just finished their senior year of college and come out here, and I'm not sure what they were doing for the last 4 years, but they apparently were not thinking about graduating because they have no idea how to behave in a workplace. So it really is, you want to figure out what's going to make you the intern that people want to call. And along with that also, stay in touch with your office. I tell all my interns to stay in touch, and very few of them actually do. So say I have 2 resumes, both former interns, both good interns, worked hard, got here early, all of that, and they both want jobs. Say one of them has kept in touch with me, an email, once every 6, 8, 10 weeks, just kind of updating me on what they're doing. And I have one that hasn't talked to me in 3 years. I'm not going to hire the one that hasn't talked to me in 3 years. I'm going to hire the one that's kept in touch. And when you're competing against other people for jobs and internships in Washington, you're competing against people who really are very, very good. So it's about knowing why someone's going to call you. And I was that intern in the fall of 2007 when I was an intern for Senator Grassley. I was in my junior year. I went home, finished my junior year, worked for Senator Grassley's PAC, finished my senior year in the 2008 elections, hopefully the worst election I will ever live through. And but in March or so, someone from the office called me and said, we have a staff assistant who's going to go to law school, he's leaving in June, do you want the job? And they could have called anyone, but something I did made them remember my resume, made them want to call me. So I think that interns think when they leave, they shouldn't call us again until they need something. And I definitely disagree. I like to hear that my interns are, studying abroad or interning with a state party or doing something. That's interesting to me, and I'm going to be so much more inclined to help someone who has reached out and has let me know how things are going. And back to my statement about being the kind of staffer you want to work with, I would also really encourage you to be nice to the people that you don't think it matters to be nice to. This summer, I will see people yell at cafeteria workers. I will see people yell at the security people that work, the policemen that work in the buildings when they're going through security. I will see people yell at parking attendants. And no one has ever been offered, I've never heard someone say, oh wow, look at that person screaming at that cafeteria worker for making their sandwich wrong. You know what? They should be at our front desk. That would be a great idea. No one's ever said that. So be nice to everyone from the janitors, to the policemen, to the other members, to the other staff, to the other interns. You never know where someone is going to end up. It's a great example. My former chief of staff, the first person to ever give me a paycheck to work on Capitol Hill, is now a member of Congress. Had you asked me 8 years ago, I had no idea he was inclined to run for Congress. He ran, won, and it's really fun and really rewarding and special to get to see him now as a member. But had I been an unpleasant intern, or had I, not kept in touch, it wouldn't mean as much to me. And it's just there's nothing wrong with ever being pleasant. So, say thank you. Don't yell at the cafeteria workers when they screw something up. You need to be pleasant to everyone. And along with that, there's obviously another party in Washington. Obviously, we all have some differences with them. There's no point in being unpleasant about the members that you disagree with. There just isn't. Anyone who's answered the phone, which I assume is most of you, in a congressional office will tell you that a lot of the rest of America is very unpleasant to us already. You don't. When I first moved to Washington, one of my very first friends was a senior staffer for Senator Jay Rockefeller. He's a pretty liberal Democrat from West Virginia. I'm a conservative Republican from Iowa. We didn't have a lot in common, but we met through some mutual friends. He was very nice, stays in touch. We're still good friends. And it's something, had I been like, oh, well, your boss is wrong on this, this, and this. Why did he vote like this? No, that wouldn't have done anything. That wouldn't have made that person's day better. It wouldn't have gotten me connected to another person. Putting that unpleasantness out there isn't worth it. There's far too much unpleasantness already directed at those of us. We absolutely don't need to direct it at each other. There's just no point. And I understand that there are members you'll get angry with. There are things you'll read in the paper and be angry about. Go home and be angry about it. It's never throwing a tantrum in an elevator, being angry when you're at lunch and people can overhear you just isn't worth it, because someone will always overhear you. And write thank you notes. I am shocked at the number of people I sit down with or give internships to that don't ever send me a thank you. And I'm not saying I've changed their life or I've done something really revolutionary, but I've taken time out of my day, in my life, to help them. That means you should send someone a thank you. I once heard a story about a senior senator writing 3 thank you notes a day. And he told his staff if you couldn't think of 3 people to say thank you to every day, then you were doing something wrong. And I still send thank yous. I was just another scheduler in the Senate. She and I were trying to get our bosses together for lunch, and I had to cancel, and we had to reschedule. I just wrote her a short little note the other day saying, hey, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be a pain. I really appreciate you working with me. Like, hope you have a great rest of your day. I would love to get a note like that. So it's about being the kind of staffer you want to work with. And sending thank yous, no one has ever been made worse for writing or receiving a thank you. And thank other people in your office. Both the person that hired you, but also the person that supervises you, your chief of staff. I keep all the thank yous that my interns send me, and it's fun to look back at them, and it's fun to see where those people are. So absolutely send thank yous. No one has ever been hurt by writing a thank you note. And now, that's kind of what I would say about being an effective intern and looking for your first job. But looking for your second job, I think we don't talk about a whole lot because those first jobs are so competitive. I knew an office that posted a staff assistant opening for a freshman member once and got 460 resumes in 48 hours. So these are extremely, all to make, I'm sure, $28,000 or $29,000 a year. So they're extremely competitive jobs. But then you get your first job, as you know, an entry-level position somewhere or a staff assistant on Capitol Hill, and you start to think that maybe you haven't really thought about getting that second job. It was all about graduating, moving somewhere, finding the first job. So I really encourage you to think about what you want to do and what you see other people in your offices on or off the Hill doing. I thought I was going to be a legislative staffer when I moved out here. I thought that I was going to work on values issues for a conservative member, and then I met someone who had made their career working on Social Security reform and never really impacted anything because it just wasn't something that with the political climate that came up. And I thought if I spend 25 years here doing this and not able to change anything, I would lose my mind. So I became a scheduler. And I wanted to be a scheduler because if your members' time isn't divided wisely, they don't get to keep being a member. If you have a member who's missing votes, if you have a member who's missing hearings, if you have a member who isn't seeing constituents, no one back home is going to vote for that person. If you don't get reelected, you can't do anything. If you don't get reelected, you can't change anything. So for me, I became a scheduler, and I like dealing with both people out here in Washington and also people at home, and I think being a scheduler is a role in which you get to do a lot of that. But it took me a while to learn that, and I got to know my scheduler in the first office I interned in, and I asked her a lot of questions, and she said, why do you want this job? And now sometimes I think that. But she helped me out a lot, and she answered a lot of questions. So I would encourage you to look at what people do, ask them questions. Ask your press person why they became a press person. Ask them what they like about it, ask them what they don't like about it. I mean, don't do this on a Wednesday when you know we're in the middle of a vote series, or don't do this, if you work off the Hill, don't do this when the person you want to talk to is running in between meetings. But email them and say, hey, do you have a time that we could sit down and chat? Find out about what made them want to do their job and what makes them keep doing it. So I would really, really encourage you to, and just kind of explore everything. Just because you came out here thinking you want to do something doesn't mean you have to do that thing. There are a ton of jobs in Washington and a ton of different fields to go down. And try different things. One of my biggest regrets is that I never did any sort of real political work. I've done campaigns here and there, and I've gone places for a month or a couple months, but I've never, taken the risk and moved to South Carolina and helped in a presidential race or something like that. I never did that. And now, at a point, being married and looking towards starting a family, I'm not at a point where I really can do that. So I'd encourage you to think about maybe options that you weren't necessarily considering, and take risks. I mean, yes, in Washington, we have elections every 2 years, and every 2 years people lose. If you move here after college, or if you do find a job and stay here, you will know people every 2 years who lose their job. Because you'll know people on the opposite side of the party, you'll know people in your party, and you'll know members that you think worked really hard and did a really great job that don't get a comeback. And that's really scary, and it's really disheartening, and it's sad. But it also should make you think about how lucky you are to get to be here. Because races aren't just won on luck. Races are won on a lot of hard work, members getting out there, good staff, etc. But races are the people that you'll never have a race, you'll never have an election year where every single race that you think should go a certain way goes that way. It's not possible. I've gotten to work through 2 really great elections for conservatives. 2010 was amazing. 2012 was great. And I've never worked full-time for a candidate who's lost. But I've seen my friends lose, and it's unpleasant. But I've never seen someone lose who it really destroys them. People will hire you, the sun will come up tomorrow, there will be more jobs. Maybe it means you're going to go downtown and work at a lobby firm. Maybe it means you're going to work for a nonprofit. A girlfriend of mine worked for a member who lost, started working for a nonprofit a few months later, loves it. Absolutely is the place where she wanted to be. She probably would not have realized that had her member won, she would have stayed on the Hill. So it's just, there are a lot of things to do here, and you don't need to pigeonhole yourself by saying, oh, you know what, I'm going to someday be a legislative director. So that means first I'm going to be a staff assistant, then I'm going to be a legislative correspondent, then I'm going to be a legislative assistant. You can leave the Hill, you can come back to the Hill, you can go work on a campaign, you can come back, and the Hill will always be here. The federal government is not leaving at any point. Someone asked me once when I was a staff assistant what was the oldest you could be and work on Capitol Hill. And I explained that you don't turn 40 and get fired, that's not how it works. And you can always, always come back. So it's something that I really enjoy, the campaign work that I've gotten to do. And I have friends that every 2 years leave and go somewhere for 6 or 8 or 9 months. And if nothing else, you get to know a lot of people. And you get a ton of fun stories. So I would really encourage work that maybe is not exactly what you thought you wanted to do. And, I'm sorry, where am I at? But along with finding, your second job or finding the job that you think you really want to do, I would really encourage you all, DC is a city of people that I find very intense. Whenever I go back to Iowa, I always feel like I'm the only person in the Des Moines airport who's in a hurry. My siblings joke with me that I have to downshift into out of Washington time, and it takes me like a day to get to the point where I'm not like, why aren't you here? Why am I waiting 2 minutes? You need to be here right now. So I think DC is a city of people that are very intense by nature of what we do. I think by the nature of the way the government works, that every 2 years, you might not be here anymore. So you want to do as much as you can while you're here. And with that, I would encourage you all to find something outside of your offices or outside of work that isn't affected by politics that you can do. Maybe you really like to cook. Maybe you really like to volunteer. Maybe you're really athletic. Like, train for a half marathon. Find a soup kitchen to volunteer at. Find something you can do that you can do for you. It will help with your burnout rate so much. I know a ton of people that have left because they get unhappy because they get burnt out. We work really long hours, we work jobs that ask a lot from us, and we see our friends in other parts of the country, getting off at 5 and being able to have a life from 5 to 8 p.m. when people on the Hill are still in their offices. So find something that's going to allow you to kind of unplug. And when you all get your work phones, don't be those people that constantly check your work phone. Yes, Tuesday afternoon when there are votes, you do need to be checking that work phone. On a Friday evening when both houses are out, you know what? John Boehner is not calling you, asking you about the vote scheduling. You don't need to check your phone. Don't be that person. That's something that has always, always annoyed me. Okay, it's recess. No one is calling you. The world is not going to end. Put your phone down for 10 minutes. It's rude, it's unpleasant, it's just unnecessary, and something that obviously bothers me. And then also, find someone who, maybe not someone as formal as a mentor, although I would encourage you all to find mentors, but find someone who can kind of look at what's going on with you, what's going on with your career, where you want to go, and kind of advise you. So maybe that means that you need to look for different jobs, or you need to, do this so you can get to this endpoint. And I think finding someone who can kind of look at your situation from the outside. I mean, I was a staff assistant for a long time. I was a staff assistant for 1.5 years. And I chose to continue to be a staff assistant for 1.5 years because I knew I wanted to be a scheduler, and I knew that if I took a job in, legislative work or something, it'd be harder for me to transition back into being a scheduler. But you'll see people who are underpaid and massively overworked, or I'm sure you all have heard stories about, monstrous members who treat people terribly. I've never worked for one, so that's wonderful. But it's helpful to have someone who from the outside, not your parents, not, any sort of romantic partner, but someone from the outside who can just look at your situation and say, you know what, maybe it would be helpful if you did this, or maybe you should start interviewing. Or you've been there for 8 months, maybe it's time to talk salary. So it's helpful to have someone who just kind of can give you an objective view of what's going on with where you are and how it's maybe hindering you to get to where you want to be. That's something, those people are also helpful. I think that in a lot of places in DC, because we live so much in the center of the 24-hour news cycle, it's so easy to think that what's going on in your office right now is going to absolutely make or break your career. Or that your member said something that maybe wasn't the best advised thing to say, and oh my God, that's going to mean that they lose their election. No, it's not. It's helpful to just have someone that can be on the outside and say, okay, take a deep breath. This is a bad day. It's all right. Sun will come up. Things are going to be better tomorrow. So I think that's something that I've found those people, and they really help. They just kind of help me maintain my sanity and be a better coworker and be just a better contributor to my office, because they're able to look at it, what's going on and say, this is not quite as big of a deal as you think it is. Or alternately, those people that are able to say, maybe you should be looking for a job because maybe things aren't going to go the way you think they are in 9 months. So I would really advise you to find both a mentor and find a person like that. Also, as you look for jobs, I hope that most of you are in offices that you would love to work in. I hope most of you are in offices that you would be happy to be hired as a staff assistant and you would come to work enthusiastically every day and do that. Oh, and that's great. I hope that I think I've given that experience to a lot of interns, and I hope that interns have that. Because you should come out here and you should enjoy what you do, and you should be proud to work for that member. But if you aren't, there's nothing wrong with looking elsewhere. After you get your first job, there's nothing wrong with wanting to say, you know what, this is great, I appreciate it, this job doesn't need to be here. You can leave. And I've had coworkers before that have this idea that if you leave an office, it means you don't support that member, it means that you're leaving because you don't think they're going places or something. No, that's not true at all. I love Senator Grassley. I think he is a wonderful senator and an amazing person. But I left because I wasn't going to keep answering his phones for the next 5 years. And that doesn't mean that I, am not on Team Grassley. It means that I wanted to find a position that would better suit me. And I had a great 4 years working for Congresswoman Elmers. She was amazing. I could not have asked for a better place to spend my early 20s. Love the North Carolina congressional delegation. But Senator Ernst is the first female of either party my state has ever elected to federal or statewide office. Being offered a job with her is amazing, and it's great to be back working for my home state. But I still love my old office, love my old coworkers, and I hope that there's nothing but wonderful things in store for them. So you can leave while still being supportive of that person. And it's okay to do that. You shouldn't be staying in a place that's hindering you, your career, your life, your paycheck, just because you love the member so much. There's a lot of that on Capitol Hill, and you can walk away from a member and still love them and support them and hope that they stay in office forever and ever, but know that maybe being on that team isn't the right place for you or isn't what you need to be doing right now. So that's something I would really encourage you all to remember. I think that's pretty much everything I have. Oh, I hope maybe something I said was helpful, maybe everything I said was not helpful and you'll go forward and do the opposite. So I hope you're able to take something away from this. And I'd be happy to take any sort of questions.
Any questions for Josie? You had mentioned staying in touch with the staff. I feel like it's kind of almost awkward.
I would feel like almost awkward or something just sending my staff assistant just like an email like, hey, I'm doing this, or like, hey, I'm doing that. Like, how would you go about doing that in a way that's not so pushy or awkward?
What I would do, I think it's, depending on what year you are, of course, I think it is helpful to just kind of check in, especially if you're approaching, a new semester, or as you're approaching the summer. Oh, I was actually just chatting, a former intern of mine had emailed me asking, telling me that he was going to study abroad. He'd done into a study abroad program that he talked about a year ago when he was in my office. And it was just an email saying, hey, just want to let you know I got into the study abroad program. I'm really looking forward to being in London this summer. Like, I hope everything's going well. So I think it's something like kind of at those benchmarks. Or if it's something that, say you have someone from your office who, went to your alma mater, and to say, oh, I've decided to change my major, or next semester I'm going to be interning at the State House, or just kind of like those. So I would say, like once a semester, I think. Does that make more sense?
Yeah.
And I think it's also, I think members and chiefs like to know where people end up also. I've had interns that went back to the Raleigh area and did internships with people that were connected to my former member. And it was nice to hear from them, and it was also nice to be able to give my member a heads up that, oh, you're going to this event, well, so-and-so is now interning for this member, so you'll see them there.
Thank you.
How would you handle being an intern in an office? Like, I'm in an office that's just myself and another intern, and the other intern is really great, very kind, but a lot of times when we're doing projects, I'm the one taking the lead on it, but I don't want to look like I'm trying to be showy about it.
Mm-hmm.
How would you balance the two?
I think what I would do is you have a supervisor in your office? Yeah. I think what I would do is just convey to the supervisor that, do it in a subtle way. Like if they say, oh, how's this project coming? Say, oh, well, I'm working on this, or oh, I reached out to these people. There's nothing wrong with saying you've done something. And especially as women, we tend to underplay it, or say something like, oh, well, if that's okay, or oh, I'll call this person if that's all right, or if you think I should do that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with completing this and saying, I was really happy to work on this week, or if there's anything similar to this, just assert that you're happy to do more, and assert that you have done something. Does that make sense? Because there's no way to say, oh, I have done 90% of this work. But your supervisor, if they're paying any sort of attention at all, is going to notice that out of the two of you, you're the intern who's more willing to stand up and who's more enthusiastic about completing things. Something else that I also did not mention and meant to mention, about doing projects or completing things that are given to you. It's always okay to say, I don't know. Or it's always okay to ask the question. Nothing is worse than asking an intern to do something, and 2 or 3 days later you find out that it wasn't done because they needed more instruction. That's not that's not helpful to your office. That's not helpful to your office, and that's not helpful to the intern. So if you really don't know how to do something, and yes, there are questions that if you can Google it, you probably should not be asking, because it's a problem-solving skill. But if it's something that you genuinely are confused about what they want, or you're genuinely not sure how to go about it, you can say, I don't know. Or if there's something completed and you've done it incorrectly, there's nothing wrong with saying, I'm sorry, it won't happen again. Again, as women, we have a tendency to say, oh, I'm so sorry, I feel awful, etc. No. Say, I'm sorry, it won't happen again, move on.
When you talked about thank you notes, were you referring more to like thank you emails or saying thank you, or writing out like a mailed note?
I would say an email or a mailed note. I know some people hate email thank yous, but I would much rather get an email thank you than no thank you at all. And I do think at the end of your time in the office, it is nice to send a written note. But I mean, if you're saying thank you to, say if you sit down with, someone else in the delegation or someone that you've met through, your supervisor or something, and it would be, if you feel more awkward about sending a written thank you, I don't think there's anything wrong with just emailing them and saying, thanks so much for getting coffee with me. I really enjoyed hearing you talk about blank. So I think email thank yous are fine.
This is not necessarily a Capitol Hill related question, it's more of a college campus related question.
Mm-hmm.
You in your position, I guess, what advice would you give to someone who's looking to make a significant impact on campus as far as
creating new ideas as women, you know, on a secular campus, changing ideas, things like that, as far as bringing in speakers for a specific organization, how to do it effectively and to actually, you know, do it.
Well, I think what I found as a college Republican is that one of the most effective things you can do as a college Republican is to not be what people have negatively stereotyped us as. I had to remove someone from a college Republican board once because they made a bunch of racially motivated comments, and I had to explain that that is not what being a Republican is, that's not what being a conservative is, and it's not appropriate. So I would say, as far as changing things, be what people don't expect. I did a significant amount of work in college with domestic violence and women's shelters, which is something that for whatever reason people don't associate conservatives with caring about. So, and there was nothing, no one said, oh, you can't come volunteer here because you also happen to be a supporter of George Bush. And they were happy to have the support. And so I would say I got to know people first as me, and then some of them were surprised when they discovered I was Republican, which is ridiculous. And my first encounter with like my university president and my university dean wasn't because I hosted a really, really controversial event. It was because I was on student government, and then my second encounter with them was because, you know, I wanted to host this or bring this person in. So if you have kind of a neutral foundation to build on, I think that's far better than having a hostile foundation and trying to come back from that. Does that sort of answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. If there are no other questions, I'd like to thank Josie so much for speaking to us.